evening of Helicon West. We're so excited to have you all here. Just as some housekeeping things, we want to say thank you to the Utah Humanities Book Festival. This event is part of the 22nd Annual Utah Humanities Book Festival. This annual free festival is the Utah Humanities gift to the community, allowing us to explore all sorts of ideas by interacting with great writers. There's flyers on your chairs about what other events that we have going on with the Utah Humanities Festival. And we have our thanks to the Book Festival's major sponsors, the George S. and the Dolores Dorr Eccles Foundation, the R. Harold Burton Foundation, the Charles Redd Center for Western Studies, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. So thank you to all of them. Also thank you to the Logan Library and everybody who helps set this up twice a month. We're so grateful to them.
Thanks, Western.
And Western. We also want to mention Star is going to be doing a poetry walkabout. I think it's next week, yes. The 17th, for women's suffrage, and she's trying to compile a poem for something in March. Yes, so she would love to come and have everybody's contributions to that event, and more information can be found on the flyer. And then finally, we're so excited tonight to have Sunni Brown Wilkinson with us. And I'm supposed to read a little bio about her. So her poetry and essays have been published or are forthcoming in the Crab Orchard Review, Southwester, Adirondack Review, Sugar House Review, Cimarron Review, Southern Indian Review, and other journals and anthologies. Her poetry collection, The Marriage of the Moon and the Field, was a finalist for the Hudson Prize. She holds an MFA from Eastern Washington University, teaches at Weber State University, and lives in Ogden, Utah with her husband and 3 sons. So we're very excited to hear from her tonight, and please welcome her.
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm actually from Logan, and I don't know why I didn't think to wear thick boots and thick socks and a beanie because it feels pretty balmy in Ogden compared to Logan right now, and I feel like I should have known better. So it's so beautiful though here. I love Logan and spent so much of my life here, so it's so good to be back. So thank you so much. Also, I'm really excited for the open mic, and I do mean that genuinely. I was here a couple of years ago and had the honor of reading and then hearing the open mic, and it was the best open mic I've ever heard. I was just blown away. In fact, I was kind of nerdy, and after people sat down, I know I went up and I kept saying, "That was really good. I really, really liked what you wrote." And I should be like, "Just leave me alone." No, that was really good. I really, really liked it. So I'm really genuinely excited to hear what you have to share as well. As was said, my first book just came out, and I almost feel like saying finally, because I do feel like it took a very long time, but I was honored to be able to get placed with a wonderful press and have been excited to promote my book. So I thought it would be fun to start with a poem. My husband's here with me, and I wrote a poem. I have a couple of poems about the fall, and so since it feels like November here, I'm going to read a poem that says November, because it feels like we're already there. But this is a poem that also has my husband in it. So. It's called "At Last the Light in the Trees Wavers." At last the light in the trees wavers and moves on like an old woman turning away from the mirror. Everything dims. Now the lamp is master. November and the rake face down in a pile of leaves is like a kid playing dead, the stick of his back staying perfectly still. And at night in our bed, the bird of me returns to the tree of you. All we've shed, leaves and feathers on the floor. The dark and your limbs draw me in. I'll sing now in my little house of bones. So I feel like it's November, right? It feels like we're already ushering in all that cold weather. I have a couple of poems where Logan actually comes in and is featured, even if it's very briefly. I grew up on Cliffside, and I remember getting in my dad's old beater truck and rambling down to downtown, we always passed the Island Market. And one day when we passed the Island Market, my dad told me this story, and it just pierced me, and it really stuck with me because it was just such a heartbreaking story. And it was about some people that he went to high school with here in Logan. So this poem is titled, How His Fingers Trembled. We saw him once crossing the street to the Island Market, a short man with a body like tinder, and my father said that was the nervous boy from high school who wore his face in his hands and had one friend, an easygoing athlete, and the two stayed close even after, the one under the wing of the other. They went bow hunting once among trees, and the light pushed away and broke into fragments. Or was it dark, and the brushing against bark, those seams of a forest that never end, and all the while the crackle and breath of trees and their own bodies moving? What is tenderness if not finger on the arrow? What is grief if not that quivering gone wrong? The arrow sailed past the ghost of some bright animal and into the heart of his friend. You know the story, surely, how he brought his body to the truck and drove to tell his friend's pregnant wife what he'd done. How he stayed in his room for months and no one knew how to come close or break the tether of his ache. How, years later, he asked my mother on a date in winter, washed his car the day before, and all the locks froze. How he stood on the curb next to her under falling snow, lighting matches, setting the flame carefully against the keyhole. Makes you want to cry. That story still makes me want to cry. Okay. I'm going to go from sad to a little happier, I hope. I teach poetry right now at Weber State, and my students just came off an assignment of teaching or writing a persona poem. I'm very, very interested in other people's voices and in other people's identities and life experiences. So occasionally I like to try on their voice, and this is a persona poem. And to give you a little bit of background, and persona, if you don't know, is like a mask. You wear someone else's mask, or you kind of put on their identity just for fun, just to sort of walk around in it for a little while in a poem. And years ago, my mom was getting rid of some of her books, and I found this gem of a book in there called The Folklore of American Weather. And it's all these like idiosyncratic, funny things about American weather, like the folklore of it, and why we use certain things, and how old farmers used to be able to tell the weather and forecast things. And it was just so fascinating to me. And I found this little story in there about a woman who was a lady balloonist. And I thought, what is a lady balloonist? Well, it's a woman who would travel in a hot air balloon by herself. And I thought, what a cool character. And so I thought I'll kind of see what it would be like to talk about her and her life experiences a little bit. But then I also found this great quote that starts the poem too, about how she found as she traveled in hot air balloon that she could hear the sounds from below so clearly. She could barely see anything beneath her, but she could hear things with so much clarity. It was as if they were right next to her. And so they said this scientist started looking at how sound travels because of this. So I thought the whole thing was so fascinating. So with that in mind, that's a lot of background. But the title of this poem is Connie Wolf, the Lady Balloonist from Bluebell, Pennsylvania, confesses. And the quote that starts it is this: one of the most noticeable phenomena of balloon flight is the clarity of sounds from below. And that is from The Folklore of American Weather, 1963. Crossing the Alps about killed me. I never dared say it, but it's true. In 1962, I was brazen, almost blonde, and I knew I could do what men say and men do. It was August, and I was childless, and the hot air drove me to it. Those peaks were Alexandria, and I was Cleopatra to their thrones. But something in me broke up there, I missed the smell of bread and bacon, of garlic turning silky in the pot. My nose turned to dampness. I sneezed a lot. Which is not to say I was lonely. My best company were birds. Just that I was tempered in a solid drift of wind, in a basket, in a foreign land, to see the world for what it is, but more than that, to hear it. Not rumors of laughter, but the laugh itself rising up. Danka between neighbors, crisp closing of a door, the cracked falsetto of a boy milking cows. They came to me as sacraments. I ate and ate. It was a new faith, hearing what I couldn't see and believing what I only heard. Villages lifted up their tokens as I passed. I knew then all our colloquial and private ways, and knew I'd always known. The way the old farmer, hearing the storm first in the chimney, knows the language of the rain. Here's one more where Logan shows up a little bit. When I was growing up, my dad took us pretty regularly up Logan Canyon, and we hiked, and most of the time we got lost. There was this time where we were really young, and he's like, we're gonna go find old Ephraim's grave. And I kid you not, we hiked for like 2 hours, and then the snowstorm came in, and we're like, Dad, we're so cold. And we made it back to the truck, and he turned the heat around, and we just sat there and warmed up, and he apologized, and we went home and like got hot chocolate and donuts or something. I don't think we ever found Ephraim's grave. It was such a great adventure. But if you haven't ever hiked up the Crimson Trail in Logan Canyon, it is really just the most phenomenal little hike. It's not little, hike. And especially this time of year, so this is sort of my nod to Logan Canyon. This isn't in my belief system, but I kind of wish it were. I like the idea of reincarnation, but maybe that we could come back as something other than people, right? What would that be like? Yeah, you like that story? So this is called My Grandmother Returns to This World. My grandmother returns to this world as an evergreen. She stands at the top of the Crimson Trail, breathing quietly like she always did. Logan River winding below. The wind doesn't bother her hair anymore. She doesn't pat it or adjust her bra like she used to. But I know her by the way she faces the world, straight-backed and solid, one branch holding itself a little higher. I want to ask her about the long veils of widows. She'll just shake her head. Her sisters surround her as always, each one a cropping of green reaching out, surveying the canyon road, cutting its way into the heart of town, where my grandfather, now a gnarled scrub oak, was once a banker. And the woman who will one day be an aspen posts a letter in the box and hears it fall faintly onto some dark floor below. One more in here. I spend a lot of time at home with my kids, and I love it. It's such a rewarding thing to be able to do. And I think we were laughing a little bit at dinner. It's really nice to have the moneymaker, and then you're the person who, I do a lot of work at home, but then I have a lot of time to do some creative stuff too, and I'm super grateful for that. But I spent many years, just seemed like I had lots and lots of little kids, toddlers and babies, and so images of nurturing and caring and of the animal world and pain and death. I don't know, I just felt like they were always with me. And so this is a poem that sort of nods to that. And it starts where one day my son got stung by a bee twice. And as a mom, you have to be ready for that stuff. So this is called Butter on the Bread and Honey on the Butter. There's an engine in the garden this morning, chugging from yarrow to cosmos. That beggar of blossoms carries a dagger, and all his sugar's the aftermath of spit. Later, the baby's foot finds him in the grass, and the wailing starts, high and thin, until we bring the cut onion to cool it out of pain. It's a trick. What makes you cry under the knife is also a balm, like each child I have borne. On the field trip to the pioneer farm, kids crowd the kitchen for a chance to churn butter. The girl in the blue apron wears her hair in 2 braids and upbraids the kids like a mother for not raising their hands. My son has just milked a cow, slid his hands over that strange balloon that fills with milk slowly from a place we can't see. He is a room with 1 bright window. He was the first to make honey in my breast. And there's a break. The baby roots the moment he wakes, turning his face to whatever moves him. Flanked by his cries, I shift the t-shirt, everything in the way of the breast that opens itself like a flower. There are days the bee comes sharply and the sugar hardens in the dark cupboard. Then I call myself honey. Take me gently by the hand. Like bread, I'm practiced in the art of rising. Like my son, I'm hungry for what I don't have. Jesus called death the sting, and we understand. After he raised the dead, what would they eat? The body and the spirit fresh but empty. The good bread of the house and something on top. They ate their way back to a consolable hunger, like a baby, back to that rooting that loosens the clutch. In the end of the mouth, it's the tongue searching, the tongue that finds what's sweet. And we'll do one more short one, and then I'll do a new one, and I think we'll call it good. Let's see. This is another mother poem. My husband and I like to go to the symphony every once in a while. We sort of get out of the house and try to do something that feels a little highbrow, so we feel a little bit like normal people. And we got to go to a concert, and they played Beethoven, this wonderful pianist, and then something else sort of odd happened. And I guess there's a sensibility for some musical pieces, and we were a little confused by it. But in the midst of all this kind of listening to this pianist, I started thinking strange things. I think I was too buried in motherhood, and I started just wondering about this guy's mom, which seems like a really strange place to go. But this poem sort of gets me in there and helps me see maybe why I ended up there. It's called Mary Cassatt. The young man who flies from New York to Salt Lake to fill in for a famous pianist, stomach flu, is also a famous pianist. We are second row at the symphony, and the pianist is skinny, early 20s, and he plays a song like lanterns crashing, something modern. But first he plays Beethoven. We watch him sway on the piano bench, eyes closed, anchored by his torso and pointed leather shoes, and I wonder about his mother. How many hours of practice did she hear? The Emperor's Suite over a screaming pot of tea, endless staircases of Chopin while she plucked his clean underwear from the basket, folded the waistband in half, tucked under the crotch. And for all the art about Paris or the sea, why not more about laundry? About children, teaching them to pee like grown-ups. Elbows on their knees, legs swinging while they wait. Afterward, the curved pink mark on their bottoms, a funny frown. Sweet Mary Cassatt, what do I owe you? What can I give you, who are both hands and mirror? In the bath, the beautifully plain mother washes the feet of her daughter. They gaze downward like suburban saints, quiet, ceremonial. The heart is harnessed in a thimble, and every day is the morning of creation. My son, on an evening walk at 4 years old, says, "The moon looks like a floating egg, Mama. I love living on Earth." Kids are the real poets, honestly, they really are. Okay, I don't even know how we're doing on time, but I think I'll wrap up. So that's from my collection, and then I wanted to bring at least one new poem. And currently live, we're moving in a few weeks, but we live on the east bench of Ogden, and we live just east of the rodeo, where they have the rodeos, and we hear everything from those stands. And they have those microphones where we can honestly probably follow exactly how each rider is doing. It's just so loud, and we watch the fireworks from our house, and it's kind of surreal to be outside of it and be experiencing it at the same time. So it just sort of popped up in a poem. And then some other funny things about Ogden come in. I had to get Ogden in there at some point. Yeah. But the name of this poem is Carpe. Tonight is a rodeo night. The announcer blaring his bull and clown doctrines so loud it carries 2 miles east to our block, where just now a hummingbird hawk moth drinks from the pink phlox with its long wand, and I'm alone for a moment, and the sky is bleeding itself out over the train tracks and the brick abandoned factories. The lights of the carpet store by the mall flicker Carpe, and I wonder just what I can seize. The homeless shelter bearing some saint's name fills up every night and spills downtown next morning. Wings of strange creatures brush our flowers while we sleep, and a hapless moose wanders a schoolyard before it's caught, tranquilized. Everyone's looking for it, a warmth, a softness in the belly, in a bed of grass. Take it when you can, seize it. Lately, sleep is a myth, and my brain is so hardwired for worry, my whole body crackles. Unlike this moth, greedy in its guzzling, drinking sweetness without asking. And now the buzzer of the bull riding sounds. I think of the grace of that single man, one hand on the saddle and the other a flag waving violently above him, a wild show of surrender. Some days it's like this, one part anchored while the other begs for mercy. And some days, it's the other, the posture he begins with, both hands together, holding tight. Sometimes you hold your own hand. That's all there is to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunni. We're really grateful to have you here tonight. And now it is my privilege to introduce one of the greatest people that you'll ever meet, and someone that I'm really excited to have as one of my mentors, Star Coulbrooke. So here we go. Star Coulbrooke, Poet Laureate Emerita of Logan City, Utah, is co-founder and coordinator of Helicon West, a bi-monthly open reading series that publishes community broadsides featuring poetry, prose, and visual arts, which we're all there. The series released its first collection of prose and poetry, the Helicon West Anthology, a 10-year celebration of featured readers in 2016. Star also founded and coordinates Poetry at 3, a local writing group in its 25th year. Poetry at 3 gives annual Poetry Month readings for which they have released a sampler collection of new work almost every year since 2000. Star's poems are published internationally in literary journals, magazines, and anthologies. She co-authored a chapbook, Logan Canyon Blend, with Blue Scarab Press in 2003 with Ken Brewer, the late former Poet Laureate of Utah. Her chapbook, Walking the Bear, by Outlaw Artists Press in 2011, is a tribute to the Bear River and is available online at the University of Utah's Marriott Library. Her most recent poetry collections are Thin Spines of Memory, Both Sides from the Middle, and City of Poetry, and both Star and Sunni will be selling books during the open mic later back there. And all of her recent poetry collections are from Helicon West Press. As Logan City Poet Laureate, Starr conducted monthly poetry walkabouts and poetry workshops, from which she composed collaborative community poems using lines contributed by those who attended her events, many of whom are in this room. She presented these collaborative poems to the City Council each August of her term. Starr also composed poems for various events, organizations, and public figures, one of which was her poem for the inauguration of Utah State University President Noel Cockett in May of 2015. This and many other poems written by Starr in her term as Poet Laureate can be found in the book City of Poetry. At Utah State University since 1992 as a student, employee, and faculty member, Starr has served as the USU Writing Center Director since 2008. She oversees a staff of 85 tutors and supervisors at 5 writing centers and collaborates with faculty from across the curriculum to create better writers. She is a longtime activist for rivers, public lands, wildlife, domestic animals, and humans. Starr lives in Smithfield with her artistic carpenter-musician partner, Mitch Butterfield, and their dog, Chesley. And now we'll hear from Starr.
Sounded like thunder or something. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Sean, for introducing me. I have all my sticky notes in here, but I'm not going to read them out of the book. I wrote them I typed them up because the font is larger. So you can pretend that I'm reading out of these, but I'm not. I'll put those up there. Sunny, that was lovely. I'm really glad I got to hear you read again, but you didn't read quite long enough. So the next time you come, plan to read longer. I'm going to read from my book, City of Poetry. But first I want to do a few from my both sides from the middle, starting with some somber notes, and then moving to some more humorous poems from the book, because I think we need to laugh more these days. So I'll start there, and then I'll read some excerpts from City of Poetry, which I think might be kind of interesting and fun. I'll do sort of a mashup. Both sides from the middle is about a timid Idaho farm girl who gets married too young, because that was about the only option way back then. And she moves to the big city of Logan to start her new life. But that life is not quite what she imagined it would be. As in the poem Fringe, which is in the book, when the thing every girl imagined in the innocence of pre-connubial bliss is likely to go horribly wrong. For example, do you ever look at your neighbors and imagine what happens when they go inside the door? Well, bears. One, I'm not making this up about the two of them. The wife's already checked the garage for his truck, gassed and buffed for the hunt, guns polished and blued in the rack, whiskey bought, ready for a fight. Anything can set him off, dusty mantle, crumpled rug, a tool out of place, even look on her face. 2. Along their stark expanse of vinyl 6 feet high, 2 black iron silhouettes, noses facing north, legs at a lope. Plodding, head bent, past the bare decor, the wife wipes her feet at the porch and opens the front door with sleeved hand, not to mark the brass with fingerprints. And sometimes you wonder how a person can get out of a situation like that. It's hard to say what might spur someone to make a change. And sometimes it takes years or decades, as in the case of this farm girl turned wife, to start breaking free. Aerobics by God. It was a class for women only, women in the same church, honing their bodies for husbands who told them God said it was good to be fit, and ever since birth control, women could be. So every Tuesday morning they followed a church-approved leader through ladylike routines in new leotards and ballet shoes, embarrassed at the sight of butts and legs they'd never seen before, their shapes having always been covered in Sunday pleats and gathers. Gradually, as confidence crept in with dance steps mastered to such easy routine they could have walked it in their sleep, their thoughts began to wander, endorphins they hadn't owned since puberty, pushing them into loving their muscles, liking their new form. Such energy! A few of the ladies quit, went off to the fitness center in town and started working out with weights. They bought cross-country shoes, aerobics and lifting on alternate days, made excuses for not going out with the family on weekends, went running on Saturdays, hot tubbing Sunday. They were looking sharp, feeling like they could conquer the world. One ran for public office, two divorced. I burned up a new pair of shoes every 6 months. Got so tight and sinewy, I stopped my cycle. No more months complaining, just energy and power. I could carry 6 bags of groceries to the car myself. No cart, no sweat. I could stay up until midnight baking, doing laundry, cleaning the bathroom. I'd fall into bed, sleep hard until 5, get up and go like hell. My man voiced his usual complaints and I decked him. All from a church lady's gentle aerobics class ordered by God. And may I just say, since this is uncensored, that there are things other than sexy workouts that can make life worth living. Songs. Now, I don't mean the ones you get at Dr. John's. That's what the word means nowadays. I'm talking about what's now called flip-flops. Such nuances there are in words, right? And what meaning we find in the simplest of things. Thongs. Had a pair of pink thongs. Little girls are supposed to like things, pastel and floppy toes out in the open. I liked the slip-slopping sound of rubber hitting pavement, slapping back up against my feet like a birthday spanking. Some of us never outgrow our lust for the plunge of a strap-on skin, the down and up of dampish rubber, whapping our senses into summer, sweaty flesh bathed in that tingle of want, more than want, a palpable need. And then I met my niche. He's the one who inspired most of the poems in this book right here. He was there with me throughout all the writing, putting up with my incessant moaning about not having time to write, not having a place to write, no room of my own, all the male poets having wives to bring them coffee, to type up their manuscripts, and make their dinner so they could keep writing, and Virginia Woolf telling us we could change all that and then drowning herself anyway. I had to rethink my ideas over the years about what I need to keep writing. And this book shows how worth it the not having the writing space can actually be. A woman reconciles herself to living with a quota of animals. Inside her 800 square feet with 2 dogs, 2 cats, and a man, the woman ponders another adoption. But every morning it is already a contest for her lap, of which there is only one, and every one of them is too big for it. And every time she comes home, they are waiting in a bunch, wagging, purring, kissing her on the mouth, wanting dinner, and they clutter. Dog toys, fake mice, shirts, newspapers, hairballs, which she must pick up before bedtime or she cannot rest. The house is barely big enough for 6, she realizes as they cluster around her kitchen, an obstacle course, 5 sets of eyes all on her. So you could go to section 5 and you could read about how there's this big old house that we find in Malad, Idaho, and how he says he'll build her an office upstairs, but the place is an impossible wreck. And then my eyes wander over the littered yard, and I think of how many years it will take him to finish this project, and I wonder about noisy neighbors, and whether my room will ever be finished, and how I always seem to live inside somebody else's dreams. But aren't our dreams made to be deferred anyway? And isn't it fun to imagine what could happen? So I have a Sunni in both sides. And she's not like our friend Sunni who's here tonight. Remember, Sunni talked about persona and this mask that you can put on. And so Sunni's persona, not this Sunni, but my Sunni's. I have a Sunni and I have a Melody and some other weird people who come out at inopportune times and tell me what I should say in my poems. And so sometimes this Sunni will bring some potential humor into a dark situation. You know, when you think about life and you think how it might be if something terrible happened, like if your spouse died or if you died and it left your spouse in a bad way because he always depended on you too much and he doesn't eat right or take very good care of himself. You always have to think about leaving him prepared just in case. Sunni cleans the fridge. In case she dies on her next trip, car crash, gunshot, slipped in the motel bathtub, Sunni makes sure he'll start out fresh, nothing on the shelves to grieve. He'll miss her like an arrow buried in the neck of the bled-out deer he could never locate. When they moved from his place, they tossed frozen steaks from second-story windows to the guard dog in the dirt yard, icy meat clinking his back head as he wolfed packages whole. Well, no freezer-burned meat in this house, no moldy bacon. In the morning, she'll toast him an English muffin with cheese. No moldy cheese, waffles can stay, his morning ritual. Freezer, microwave, toaster, onto the table with all his pills, and imitation maple syrup, spray on butter substitute. Sunni thinks maybe tonight with the milk a tapioca pudding. Even grief wouldn't keep him out of that, especially not with Cool Whip. She could stock the freezer for millennia with Cool Whip. It never goes bad. It's like Twinkies, one symbol away from chemical. Cooked pudding. Cooked pudding will use up the last of the eggs. Cookies already baked, not his favorite. She'll take them to work, give them away. The apples too and the cucumbers. Tomatoes she picked to save from the frost. She went around the neighborhood, saw tarps and blankets spread on gardens. Not hers, she figures, let it go. He'll never miss it. Like he'll never turn the compost, never mow the lawn again, pick up dog poop. Why bother? His motivation gone. Sunni wipes the glass shelves, leaves the jams in their jars, pasta in boxes, flour and cereal, essentials she needs. If she ever comes home, it could happen. Ever since she learned to drive, she's imagined her demise, a semi crossing the yellow line, and she's the deer in the headlights, so she cleans the fridge in case she dies, but every time so far she hasn't. Empty fridge can go 2 ways. Nothing for him to throw if she's gone, and Texas Roadhouse otherwise. Isn't it nice that we have options? Logan is such a great place to live. We've got a few decent restaurants. We went to one, we went to Tandoor, it was so fabulous. Lots of parks, beautiful mountains all around us. Sunni talked about this too, how great Logan is and how much we love it. Big music and art and theater and literary scene here, really. When you think about the size of Logan, we've got a lot here. There's some pretty great schools and a highly accredited university, grocery stores and roads and public transportation and a whole lot of people who really care about our valley, the environment, and each other. And that's what this book is about, City of Poetry. It's all the poems that I wrote to Logan City in the course of my term as Logan City Poet Laureate. The poems I've written for events and organizations, for people and to people and about people and with other people's words. There's a possibility that you are in this book because it's a love poem to everybody who lives here, no matter when or how long. So here I'm going to do this little mashup of excerpts from the book. Like I said, I was going to take each one and open to each page, but I'll probably get mixed up, and so it's all here on the paper, and you can pretend I'm reading from this, and I hope you'll buy it for the history, because it's an amazing place here, and you are amazing, wonderful people, and thank you again for being here tonight. And here's the mashup. City of Poetry, a book of love poems to Logan City. Let's say it in poetry. Not from media feeds, not from Google TV or mass email, but out of the heart where our stories reside. Those in subdivisions, cul-de-sacs, with televisions pulsing through front windows, kids outside playing hide and seek, parents with their feet up after company, dishes waiting in the sink. Swallows that dip and tumble through the bug-thick dusk, gorging on mosquitoes that whine past our ears as we swat at them, as the peach-pink sunset spans both sides of the sky. It comes down to this. When your dogs bark on a wintry Sunday morning, you look out your window and there in the driveway, 2 neighbors are shoveling your snow. It's 20 degrees, yet you open the door to smiles as warm as the full golden sun. Or it comes down to this. The shuttle from the car repair shop arrives, and the man who was already in the front seat gets out, holds the door open, urges with the sweep of his hand for you to take his place. And when you arrive in the shop, he opens every door as if you were a celebrity. Or this, the group of citizens who lifted the crashed car from the motorcyclist's broken body, pulled him free, made sure of his recovery. Or this, the dozens who stood by our Muslim friends, citizens whose lives became precarious when fearful voices threatened. Why not see the swarm, the rabble, the kaleidoscope of souls who lift us and transform us into finer spirits, like seeds, like dreams, the stories we need. Breathing together our blood, our cells, our souls, art bouncing off the sheen and shoals of sound waves washing into us, pulling back and crashing in again, emotions deep and moving, unraveling the creeks over rocks that roll with treasure, burst of winged creatures to fish with, dream of a trout hunting in shallows. The heart's call, the blue-black center of muscle pulsing, viscous red cells clinging together, shunting through ropey veins under the skin, curling and forking, backs of the hands, crease of the elbows, your tender and toughened jugular. A force of your own nature, sassy. Be the songs that burst with power. Streams of sunlight dancing from tree branches, yellow jackets, swamping blue fountains of water. Mystery and memory in growth's own time, blossoms flooding the air with wild aroma, blackberries bursting, willow reaching barren fingers to a sky laced with fire, summer's last pale children clinging. This time of year, we're called to the wild by late summer cricket song, cool dew on the lawn, crisp essence of being alive. This time of year, birds hold up the lowering clouds, their flashing eyes reflecting yellow trees against dark sky. Bees condense into clouds of sweetness, heart-pumping, fast-moving beings that terrify like sudden love. We are dreamers of a better way, navigating by feel, by emotion, writing words of tufted softness that drift on the current like grief, like leaves relieved of their dry, brittle crunch. We are people of desert and forest seeking to know our place in a land once meadowgrass and dragonflies, people whose tiny alterations can change life on a grand scale, umber sky burning earlier and earlier. We are the surging joy of ivy, sidewalk art of breezy leaves, our quirky personalities, our knowledge and its loss, how summer lasts all year in the longing for it. We are, at the end of the day, just needing to be loved, just trying to get home in this city of who we are, this town that lifts us. No wonder we love. No wonder we love. Thanks.
Thank you, Star, and thank you, Sunny. Star and Sunny will be back in the back selling books during the open mic. Sunny's book is $17, and Star has a list of prices for the different books that she's brought. So if you're ducking out, duck on by that table. Yeah, I'm a really good salesperson. So tonight we have a short open mic list right now, so if you didn't get the chance to sign up and you really want to, do it. But we have 3 readers right now on the sign up, so we'll start off with Ron, and then we will hear from Diane, and then we'll hear from Kendall.
I'm going to put this mic up just a little bit. You stand as close as you can to it,
Hi. It's coming up. Just about everything around this house is discovered every home occupied by a mouse. Just about everything around his yard, both things that were soft and things that were hard. Could spot everything around his block. He scouted every tree and every yard. And near around his sailed, across the sea, and discovered land, made history. We found a land, manifest all of us. His name is known as Christopher Columbus.
You all know that we're going to have a full moon Saturday night. People really like to watch the moon, cowboys especially, and because they love to watch the moon, and very often there's an eclipse. This is a poem about a cowboy watching an eclipse. It's called Cowboy Eclipse. The night. It falls out on the plain here on this great divide. Alone and lonely, me and Jack got no place to hide. Restless, 'neath the stars tonight, the vastness of the land. Another day along the trail, what journey lies at hand? Then I see her, rising fast. Recall the talk in town, a backdoor peak, this heavenly tryst, a massive show going down. Moon, she waits, hot mama for her man, scattering a trail of bright red flow, while coyly strumming his heartstrings with that tune that all guys know. He slides in, a thief of night, that shadow man in black, saddling up, foreplay erect, cutting her no slack. Then he nails her, clear up there, and rising takes his leave. Her color fades, she's less bright now, and I wonder, does she grieve? I tell my horse, did you see that, Jack? Tired eyes say he don't care. This yarn is one I won't forget, 'cause I seen it, I was there.
Yeah.
That's it. Let's see. This is a short story that I've written, and it was kind of inspired by this kind of scenario when a relationship ends and it seems like it would be a good idea to date. And one of the ways that you can do that is by downloading an app on your phone called Tinder. And you can create a profile for yourself where you upload some photos and write a short bio. And then you can swipe through other people's profiles and look at their photos. And if you find a set of photos that you like, you can swipe right on that. And they're doing the same thing. And if they swipe right on you, then the app tells you both that it's a match. And this is used commonly in a lot of cities because it's an effective way to meet new people. And this story is about imagining how it would be to use this tool in Cache Valley. It's called One Date Wonder. He wasn't the first Jacob to pop up on my Tinder feed, and there would be others. But there was a reason my hand shook as I scrolled through his photos. From above, ripped arms and shoulders, / no bald spot. From the side, smiling / prominent teeth. From afar, waiting with a dog / exposed calves. The photos themselves meant nothing, and neither did his bio. Cumin, turmeric, black peppercorn. My hand shook because this was a man I knew. A man I had used since my first foray into Tinderland to define the distance between perfection and every other right swipe like. Sure, he's all right, I would say about some decent-looking fellow, but he's no Jacob Sanderton. And now, here was the man himself. What he was doing on Tinder besides looking for casual sex because he didn't want to be in a relationship, I didn't know, nor did I care. Slowly, I placed my finger on the screen. Slowly, I moved that finger to the right. More. The like stamp appeared. I pushed harder. Then bam, it's a match. I was alone in the kitchen, hands shaking, blood streaming into my head. I paced and waited for my body to calm down, because now I had to follow my rule. If he's actually attractive, I message him. I took my time. I wanted to communicate, but keep things comfortable. I decided to be honest. When the most attractive man in Cache Valley pops up on my Tinder feed, I have to pay my respects, I wrote. Hope you're doing well. Haha, most attractive, he replied. I'm doing great. How have you been? ? Then began a slow march toward nothing. Over the next 3 days, we ascertained how we each were, and assessed whether there was mutual interest in meeting, yes. Jacob was even willing to get coffee with me, passing my lame suggestion test with flying colors. So So there we were on the verge of finding a time to actually meet when things went south, literally. Jacob went to Zion, then 2 desert trips, then just other trips, /gone, / I have no idea, / none of my business anyway. I began to lose hope. And a few weeks into nothing, I decided to clear the air. So, I wrote, do you actually want to meet up, or do you just feel compelled to because we know each other and you're nice? Yes, we should meet up, he said. I'm terrible at planning. Ha ha, that's one of the few things I've learned about you over the past few weeks, I replied. But I didn't mean it. Clearly, he had no trouble organizing climbing gear, lining up partners, and coordinating transportation to take advantage of the summer season. So I was surprised when, a few days later, he asked what I was doing on Sunday. And then immediately not surprised when my ready announcement of availability was met with another silence. And that was it. With all the balls in his court, I had no choice but to write the man off. Fall in Cache Valley is a special time. The weather is perfectly warm and perfectly cool. The days are still long. It's a time for biking everywhere, for soaking up the valley views, for smelling the warmth of the dead grass. And for those who can actually do the task, it's a time for picking apples and pressing cider. I am an apple fiend, an apple enthusiast, an apple specialist. Decades of 5 a day have left me with a deep knowledge of apple varieties, their potential, their extremes. I can name them by taste. I cradle them like golden eggs. But, and I have no excuse, I am an eater, not a picker. I'll buy apples in the store, but if I go with a friend to gather 1 or 2 naturally grown specimens for a snack, it's because I didn't know that's what we were doing. So it was unusual that one Saturday, weeks after I'd given up on Jacob, I found myself walking by an heirloom tree in the park across from my house and considered harvesting a few to get me through the afternoon. The thought, however, ended there. All apples within reach were gone, and it wouldn't have crossed my mind again, except that the next day I happened to pass by the same tree with my housemate. So my housemate teased, why don't you just pick some apples instead of spending a fortune at the store? Oh nah, I said, they're way out of reach. Then, suddenly, strangely, I thought of Jacob. Here I was, unwilling to expend any effort to pick a fruit that defined my sense of self. What if Jacob's lack of effort didn't indicate indifference toward me at all, but was paired instead with a deep, unspoken understanding that we had already developed a lifelong connection? So I picked up my phone and invited him over for dinner. Jacob arrived in a clean green t-shirt. Looked like he'd washed his hair and combed it down around his ears. I smelled fruity shampoo. This was the man I'd met for the first time 4 summers ago at a brunch with friends, when I had sat silently, bereft of any social ability because his eyes were so large, brown, and wide on his face. And from the little he said, I gathered that he had just stayed up all night, comforting a female friend who was going through a difficult breakup. Thank you, Tinder, for helping me find a way to get this man into my home. Hi, I said, and immediately took a large step back away from the threshold and my guest. In the kitchen, my housemate was siphoning wine from one carboy into another. You know Jacob, right? I said, pretending that I didn't know they were totally Facebook friends. They said hi and hugged. Damn. Finally, I offered Jacob a beverage, tea or water. He declined. We put chicken curry on our plates and sat at the table. How long have you lived in Logan? I asked. Oh, since 2010, he said. I remember going to your house 4 summers ago. You were watching a puppy. Your garage was filled with bikes. Yeah, it's been interesting living here. Lots of missionaries came by at first. I was rude to one of them. I had to go to Salt Lake, and finally I just had to say, I'm sorry, but I have to go. I laughed, but then I realized that our plates were empty. Fear, panic. I checked my breathing and regulated it. I kept my body still. I thought of the games covered. Cribbage, chess, memory. No. I had purchased a ukulele earlier that day with this exact moment in mind. Jacob plays basically every instrument with some competence, including full drum set. I explained that I was a beginner and strummed a set of 4 mystery chords I had put together that evening. Here, you play something, I said, holding it out to him. Oh, I can't do much. What if we do some guitar and bass instead? Sure, I said. We moved to the living room. I handed him my guitar case, a Martin insignia on the outside, an old lentil residue from a camping accident on the inside. I unzipped my bass case and removed the large instrument. You play something and I'll follow. Oh, he said. He stopped strumming altogether and looked around uncomfortably. Oh, I said. I'll come up with something then. Just give me a second to mess around. I laid down a bass line and we jammed on the pattern. I liked his rhythms and notes. I liked our style. He played quietly, so I played quietly. Then it was 2:30 a.m. Are you planning on sleeping? I asked. And do you want to go home or sleep here? Because you can. I'll sleep here, he said. We went upstairs to my room. I had cleaned it and made the bed. My dirty clothes were in their basket. My books and journals were on my bedside table. The last time I brought a man up here, I'd closed the door and he'd kissed me. Then we'd moved toward the bed. This had been a classic approach that I understood. Jacob and I just stood there. This is my room, I said. I took off my sweatshirt and got under the covers. Then he climbed into bed from the bottom to avoid climbing over me. I took off my jeans, tank top, bra. He removed his shirt and pants. I turned off the light. Do you ski? He asked. Yes, I said. Do you? Yes. Then we lay there, still, silent. 2 long, narrow skis and French fry, afraid to brush edges. I recalled key lessons from my wilderness first responder course. Don't touch creepily, they always say. Press firmly, with confidence, narrate everything. Silence. So, Jacob, I paused. Do you normally sleep in women's beds and not touch them? No, but that's a good question, he said, and finally put his hand on my skin. I had never witnessed a body like his before. Every surface hard, like stone, like rock, like an aged chicken, good for soup and nothing else. This was the body of a full-time climber. His hands were gloved in thick calluses ridged on the backs. His butt was small, tight, hard. I explored. I wasn't even thinking about sex. I was too nervous, too surprised. I put his hands on my stomach, on my breasts. I wanted him to feel how we were different, to know that I was soft. I kissed his fingertips and chest. He didn't move too fast. He didn't put my hands anywhere. He kissed me and massaged me in strange places I never thought about, between 2 bones on my back, the crease at the top of the backs of my legs. We didn't speak. We couldn't see. And I was scared because I knew I could love this man.
Thank you. And for the last 3 readers of the night, we have Chad Van Zetten, Colton Kindred, and Nicole King.
Hi. I'm just going to read a poem. I entered some poetry that I've kind of been writing just lately between book stuff, and I won a prize. But I'm not going to read that one. This is called Listening In on the Grown-Ups. When I was a kid, I mastered the art of listening in on the grown-ups. It was not easy listening in on them. Think back and remember how grown-ups employed a kind of all-seeing radar which alerted them to the presence of furtive, nosy children. My dad could detect an eavesdropping kid at 20 meters. Right in the middle of Mom's dishing about my cousin's unquenchable drug habit, Dad leans back, cranes his neck, squints into the darkness of the hallway, and he raises a hand and nods in that direction nods in the direction of the discovered kid as a silent signal for all the grown-ups to turn their talk to topics less titillating. My brother was stealthy, able to infiltrate the perimeter of any talking circle, but he listened too attentively, gave himself away, and the grown-ups drove him off. My sister used charm. She cooed her way adorably into the circle, but then the grown-ups forgot to gossip, begging her instead to do I'm a Little Teapot. I alone could creep beneath their tripwires to insinuate myself within earshot and monitor their grapevine broadcasts like the Dutch Underground or Viet Cong. Indifference was my secret. Pretend you could give a shit about grown-up talk. Play with your action figures and army men with a sort of disregard for their blah, blah, blah. Become the background noise that they need to cover their hushed tones. But listen, too, you must do both at the same time. It takes years of practice. Yeah, she's using again. Oh, of course it's not his. It's Hodgkin's. Keep that to yourself, though. All the juiciest scoops came from my news bureau. They figured I didn't care or hear, thought I was just over there pretending to be G.I. Joe or Han Solo. Pro tip, never let it register. Never acknowledge anything. If your mom whispers about your best friend's folks filing for DIVORCE, don't go all quiet. Don't look up and go, what? That's the deadliest of giveaways. What are you doing back there? What are you gawking at, Leroy? Go play. The grown-ups are talking. Now that I am a grown-up myself who sits in circles where secrets are traded, the others rely on me to run their counterintelligence. Because I can detect when a kid is listening in, the sideways glances, the too quiet play. I can feel the slight change in air pressure when a kid slips into the room behind a chair. Having mastered the art of listening in on the grown-ups, I have all the finest tripwires.
Howdy, I'm Colton. I'll read a medium one and then a couple short ones. This is called Boat-Rat. Let's say that in some other language besides English sometime, right? I want, dear boy, to trace your triadic eye and tire your demons to let them flee from the gargoyles on your shoulder which lurch up your neck. Kiss them down, kiss the raining of your triumviral eyes, tell you obscure truths of my own soul, and recount the few memories of many days. We see each other. Oh, skipped a line. When the lids of foreheads open, in deepest thought we see each other, and the legs of brow need just open up and birth this reality which both of us know, but is manifested only in our closed yet witnessing eye. That's the first one. This is a grounded. You go for the view, you only look down. The ground has held you up your whole life, not the vistas. Harm. What you left behind will be taken from you. What has been taken from you will be returned again. My own. I need a problem I could solve. My fist, my own, tastes sweetest. The enemy of man runs from the mad who see themselves. I couldn't tell you what that means, but I liked it. And the last one is Shame the same we hold as stewards, each other's shame, like the flame that we must keep lit. Our eyes are that which shine, must be kept shaded as not to burn blind. Well, thanks.
So I was trying to break writer's block, so I asked my friends to give me a title. And so I wrote a flash fiction piece with the title of Elizabeth and the Amazing Octopeople. It's not my idea. Elizabeth dove into the water with an air tank attached to her back and a mask over her face. She sank quickly to the bottom of the sea. Perhaps she shouldn't be out here all alone, especially tonight. The sky was black as squid's ink, and the water was thick as old milk. Her breath tasted like tequila, and her head felt vaguely fuzzy. The world was quiet under the water. A tentacle swirled by her face so fast that she wondered if she had imagined it. She flicked the flashlight on and illuminated the water. She almost could have sworn that there was music playing somewhere. White coral reflected the light eerily, a cold, empty ghost town at the bottom of the ocean. Elizabeth touched one with a single finger, and it crumpled like chalk. Her tears tasted like the ocean, and the ocean tasted like poison. A beautiful face floated in front of the light, dark and strange. Arms reached out, and soft hands touched breathing contraptions. Elizabeth's breath caught in the tubes. The figure was enchanting and beautiful. She should be afraid of this person who wasn't quite human, who didn't wear a mask and didn't seem to mind the darkness. Were they singing? Was that music? The creature came closer. Their eyes were dark and inhuman, and their cheeks were narrow and gaunt. Their skin was a deep, beautiful brown that looked almost blue in the light. Tentacles wrapped around her legs and pulled her closer. There seemed to be a question in the movement, in the eyes. Why? Why does the ocean die? Who does this? Who? The questions intensified and the song grew louder. Her mind went from fuzzy to numb, and the light fell from her hand, cracking a dead coral as it hit the bottom of the seafloor. The figure touched the mask, running dark fingers over the plastic protecting her eyes, protecting her breath. Fingers touched the clasp and released it, pulling the mask away from her face. Elizabeth didn't fight, but closed her eyes and gave in to the cold kiss of the salty, dying ocean. Wow.
Okay, so Weston is like being his best tech self and getting the mic figured out, but we don't know what's happening. But we have one more reader, and it is Sean. And there are three of us, but it's this Sean that's reading.
Well, I'm probably the most counterfeit Sean here because the actual name is Shantanu, so never mind. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so never really been a big public speaker. I mean, I always imagine most writers write just because of their fear of public speaking. I mean, people are bolder when they're writing YouTube comments than they're actually speaking out to you, so nobody's really that bad. Yeah, so I'm sure most of you must have watched the film Slumdog Millionaire, and there's a scene in there in which they show you how the kids are basically like kidnapped and forced into like begging and stuff like that. They go on to streets, parks, wherever, and then they'll basically be like asked to beg. Whatever they earn is completely gone on to it's an organized like a black market. So this basically happened to me and my mother. Not the exact thing, it's dramatized, but we were having some sort of sweet on the like street food, and we offered one to a begging child, and he just threw it away and kept asking for money because sweets don't help him get the favors from his overlords in a way. But yeah, this is about kind of about that. So I sat on a park bench with a sigh, thinking of questions how and why. Life's never as we want it to be. The answer was about to come to me. A little girl came by just then, her age no more than 9 or 10. Her dirty hair tied carelessly, her face showed all melancholy. She's not the only one though. In thousands every day they grow. We have seen so many of her kind, some old, some ill, some fully blind. With naked feet on the grass she stands, a depressed face and outstretched hands. Her palm lines tell a tale of pain, of asking passers for spare change. An involuntary move of mine, when my hand made a jingle of coins, but stopped just as a thought, then boomed. Who was I giving this penny to? I sat there in a frozen bind, as words of wisdom crossed my mind. I thought of the demons who stay and hide behind this innocent face, basically the people who run the black market. Well, if I give away this coin, she will keep following this line, moving on to some new place with hungry eyes and a gloomy face. Does my giving do any good? Will she get clothes or a plate of food? Or is that also snatched away and she sleeps hungry on the hay? Those greedy ones who cause her pain, who use her innocence for their gain, make her a picture of pity to induce thoughts of sympathy. Putting these thoughts away, I raise my eyes to find her childish gaze. What bad could this little one do, whose luxury is a pair of shoes? I then pulled out a candy bar. She looked, her eyes shone like 2 stars. A penny was that chocolate's cost, which revived the pure innocence lost. For a moment she saw with delight, but soon that smile went out of sight. A hint of worry, she looked afraid, and checked if someone watched her there. From here to there she looked around, a little afraid, a little dumbfound. She'd never been made an offer so. She couldn't say yes, she couldn't say no. Somewhere behind these tattered clothes, hiding behind those dirty robes, was a little child in her heart who wished to take that candy bar. I placed the chocolate in her hand. Hesitant, she still took it, and she held it and then looked in awe, and that was the moment I saw that people with roofs on their heads, the ones who sleep in feathery beds, may curse their lives again and again, while some quietly suffer in pain. As she hopped away in a joyful trot, I smiled with the happiness I had got, then thought, in a world with so much greed, how many such smiles would we need? Try your best to spread some good, but still some bad will stay, and should. It should be so, for goodness sake. A coin with both sides same is fake. And happiness lies in every bit. It's how, not where you look for it. For some it may be a supercar. For her it was that candy bar. There's sort of a small prose. I don't know if it's a prose. I don't know what fits the bill. I was just very frustrated with my job search about 2 years ago, and that's when and then one of my friends got a job just through a reference, and that really pissed me off. So yeah, this was basically like me taking my frustration out. Well, and it was basically just this time of the year, and yeah, New Jersey is not very good, so. Okay.
Quote of the night.
I'm on my porch. I hug my arms closer to shield myself from the frost-bitten wind that hits me in a hurry and seeks to take every ounce of heat out of me as the lifeless sun hides behind the horizon, betraying his responsibilities. I could wear a jacket, but my flawed attempt at repentance and the crooked equation between self-harm and relief does not warrant a jacket. My crimes won't be absolved by some mere experience of the icy winds, when inside I feel as cold as standing on the South Pole naked during the winter after having eaten ice for lunch. I still do it. Maybe it is that, or maybe my brain is too heated up after churning through the myriad of possibilities of every possible decision, action, and result that comes or has happened, and I'm out here to cool it. When most folks see the world, they see ice cream trucks and mailmen and restaurants and expensive cars and sexy women. And it strikes me as pretty wonderful and at the same time very painful a thought when I think about it. People don't think, and they never think. They seem to make their own rules as they go along. Who governs, or should, their each movement? How can you achieve a fair system in the midst of such absolute vulgar neglect and disrespect of the little rules that nobody shall care to see? Who ensures the upkeep of these laws, and where does one draw a line? Why should something as obscure and arbitrary as human judgment have the final say over anything? How do I know if the corners someone cut on a paper were of the right shape, or if the doctor treated the patient without any bias? This is just one example of the countless storms that run in my head. Fairness. How can one possibly achieve fairness? My job search is a fantastic example. I have seen people get jobs through references. What is a reference? When a person is too lazy to use his own judgment and does not give two shits about fairness to all the possible job seekers in the market, he can choose to employ someone else's highly biased judgment and yet soundly sleep at night after giving the job to some idiot who simply had to know someone to get a job, while a talented and deserving person sits on their porch, wondering where they could have gone wrong in their application process. Imagine if they used references to diagnose patients, or to identify terrorists, or to determine who's a murder suspect. What do you think, old friend on the phone? Who's the killer? Well, my neighbor is in a different state, has a son who's being bullied by a guy in school. I think he's the killer. Solved.
Thank you to everyone who participated in the open mic, and thank you, Star and Sunny, for your poetry.
Thank you, Sean.
Be sure.
Thank you, Wes.
Oh yeah. And Stephanie. Yeah.
I totally did.
So be sure to fill out the papers that were on your chairs.
Yeah, fill those out, please. Those are really important. The Kentucky Humanities would be very happy if you would return those right into the case.
Yep, and then make sure to stack your chairs and get them to the side, and buy books from Star and Sunny.
Thank you.